I'm here at the South Martinsville River access to talk a little bit about erosion control. I'm Justin Hitt from Prosperity Homestead. As you can see, this is the Smith River and it's running heavy with silt. And by the way, there are these beautiful Smith River access points with signage and nice little resting areas. You can put in a canoe or a kayak. And the river flows pretty strong after a rain. You can see their little display for the Smith River ecosystem. And most of this is managed by the Dan River Basin and various other elements that keep these rivers clean. But the trash is not the only thing we want to keep out of the river. We want to keep sediment and organic matter out of the river. And I'll share a few solutions with that. First off, let's look at what we got here. So the water comes in off the hardscape and literally flows down the slope into the river. And when we talked about patterns in past videos on permaculture, you can see the patterns of erosion where there are soil going into the river. Now, along the edge of the river where people fish, you can see where soil's gone into the river. So the entry points of soil into the river include any access point that has not been stabilized. And I'm kind of unclear why the boat ramp is so high up there. I don't know if the river gets this high from time to time, but there are natural reasons why the river might have some silt in it. So what we want to do is on our personal property, reduce as much as possible the soil going into the river. Now, if soil is going into the river, what else is going into the river? Well, we have trash that goes into the river. We have nitrogen and manures from animals like dogs, cats, other things that are outside. We have trash. You can see there's a barrel on the river over there. We have other things that are not helping the ecosystem. Now, this river is too fast right now to be kayaking in because we've had a recent rain event. When the river settles and relaxes some, you're going to see a lot of that sediment drop out. Now, what does that do? The sand sediment reduces the depth of the river itself, and it also impacts the ecosystem and wildlife that can live in there. Now, you can see there's some grass to hold back the water. Some of the main ways to reduce sediment in creeks, rivers, and streams is to use detention basins, and you can actually see terracing at the bottom there. And so terracing will slow and spread water. We typically don't want this kind of downward slope that can create flow. So we do have good things here. We got terracing with grass on it. We've got on the other side there, you can see how the properties are terraced, except for the access point. And overall, we've got obstacles in the river. So you can create artificial sandbars. You can create other things in the river itself. But the best solution, of course, is to keep the sand, silt, and other materials from getting into the river. Now, I am seeing that there is grass underneath this sand here. So some of this sand is deposited on the stream beds or the stream banks, which could be a surge that happens while the river is receiving the rain. And some of that sand you could actually test for plastics and chemicals in order to determine how much is being deposited into the river itself. Now, I've done a number of videos on what I've done on managed properties or the recommendations I've made with detention basins, with terracing, and those things really do work. But again, they require a homeowner to take action. Actually, this river is pretty interesting. If you're looking at patterns in the river flow itself, you can see there's a sandbar about center of the frame before you get to that island. And this water is moving very fast. Now, again, where does this water go? Well, the Smith River deposits in the ocean eventually. Pretty much all rivers deposit in the ocean. So if we're going to address silt, we can go upstream and we can capture that silt in ponds, detention basins, or even down in the property on how you landscape the property. Now, any surplus fertilizer, weed and feed, or anything that you put on your lawn is actually going to run downstream during the rain events, and it'll actually kill vegetation, because vegetation is something that can capture this water. And actually, we're gonna look at patterns here. I'm walking across. You can see this bar here has received a lot of water, so a surge. And then you can see in the flow of the leaves there how those trees have captured the water as it flowed down, as well as a bunch of trash. There is a temptation for management when you manage these areas to just bush hog all this stuff out or to cut it all out. And again, that causes another problem where the river's not able to capture and deposit the sediment that's in the system. We need to capture and deposit to get it out of the river. But again, we also need to reduce the amount of sediment that goes into the river. So when they have projects and they take all these logs out, which they don't do very often here, but if they take all these logs out because they are hazards to kayakers, they're also reducing the number of snags or areas where the silt could get caught and slow and spread that silt out. Now in the edges of the water here, you'll notice it's not moving around as much as out in the center. Now again, this will all settle down. Smith River is a beautiful river to kayak on or to canoe on, but you can see on the edges there's less movement, and so the water is going to be clearer because it allows the sediment to drip out. You can see all the way up here, I don't know if you can see it on the camera, but all the way up here where I'm standing, there is flow where water has pushed over the vegetation. And so now how do we stabilize this? Well, instead of having a ramp here, that's a gravel ramp, you could have steps. Now it looks like there used to be some steps in here, and you could have actually this type of build right here is very nice. Makes it safer to get up and down. You can bring kayaks out, set them up out away from the water, but we have to understand that if you just channel all the water down a hill, even with these large rocks, you're going to send a lot of soil, a lot of trash, and a lot of other materials. If there was a flat platform up top, which there kind of is, but it detained water into a drain system with some kind of screen, you may have a better opportunity to screen out that water, that surplus rainwater or stormwater. If you're using these terracing areas, for example, and limiting how many people can walk on these terraces so that you can get a good grass, a good thick layer of grass there. Allow more rapine area, which is the area at the edge of the water. Allow it to have more shrubs and trees and brush. You can clean the river at this point. There's actually a little rapids way out there on the other side in that corner. So what can you do as a homeowner? So if you've got property in the watershed of the Smith River or any other river system, you can do a lot to keep water from leaving your property. First off, you can manage the lime and the fertilizer and the weed and feed that you use on your property. If you get proper pH, as we talked about in the year-round green program, if you get the proper pH of your grass and you regularly overseed or top dress with compost, most often you can go without weed and seed. Most weeds need a pH that is not compatible with grass, and so if you get that neutral pH that the grass is preferring, the grass will choke out most of your weeds. You can also, how you landscape, you can have, instead of the painted mulch that's covered with chemicals, you can just have regular wood chips as your mulch, or use areas where you have wildflowers, where you have small bushes and shrubs, or even small wood pockets on your property itself, where you basically just let stuff grow back naturally. Grass is great. Grass holds the soil. We can show you the rocks here. There's no grass here. I don't know that if this is treated or not, but there is no grass growing here. Very few clumps of grass. But if we walk right over here, you'll notice that the grass is more stable, and that's because grass will put roots into the ground. So on any of your slopes, the more grass you can have, the better. Now this area here could use some lime to get the pH going, get the pH neutralized, because a lot of the expression of weeds is acid-loving weeds. This area could be allowed to grow back 6 inches or so that the leaves would blow off the top of the grass, and then ultimately the roots would be deeper into the soil, which provides better competition when it comes to the weeds and things that are growing. Another factor you can see is how when they mow this, they're probably mowing it with a zero turn, and they're mowing it in the same pattern every time. So that you can see the tracks in the center of the screen there. That's where they've zero turned over the hill, which creates tracks, which then creates erosion. Leaving that hill with some small shrubs or brush, leaving it with a pollinator garden, leaving it with more of this natural exclusion would likely help you keep the soil on the hill rather than in the river. But everything we're showing you here can be done on your own property so that you're not putting silt into local streams and then those local streams coming into, say, the Smith River watershed. And that brown is not good. That brown, again, is a lot of fine silt particles, sand, organic matter, chemicals and fertilizer, petroleum products, and it all goes down into the ocean. Now, why do we want to keep our rivers and streams clean? Well, because there's some awesome fishing here in the Smith River. Kayaking and boating is safer when you don't have trash or objects in it. The water quality is good for the invertebrates, the small creatures that live in the water, which again are the basis of the food system. Dragonflies, frog habitat, aquatic animals all thrive on those tiny zooplankton and other types of creatures that live in there. Zooplankton is not actually a creature, but yeah, I hope you get my point. We also want the depth of the water to stay consistent rather than the sand filling up and creating sandbars everywhere. Sandbars can be a hazard. I remember canoeing on the Smith River, and we pretty much got stuck in every sandbar there was, due mainly to my lack of skill in kayaking or canoeing. But ultimately, those sandbars don't need to be so excessive if you have less sand, less silt going into the river. Now, you can see there's a yard over there that actually has a nice little terrace. So you come out of the house, you come down onto a terrace, and then it comes down to a secondary terrace. Terracing is a great way to get more use out of your property. It gives you more places to stand and enjoy the ambiance in the river itself. Even if you don't have a river behind your house or you just have a creek behind your house, the terraces, again, give you more level space. I'm seeing some of the houses there have allowed their woods to grow out so that they have a lot of biomass. They have a lot of snag and areas where things that are coming down the river can get caught. Now, the roots of those trees and all of this brush is actually holding the soil in place so that if we have a surge in the river, as you can see down there, it's going to deposit more sand and deposit more materials than it's going to draw along. So you can see there's deposited materials in a berm here, and then there's materials that have been pulled away on this other side. But ultimately, it is the difference in management, not just, a thing that's going to happen. The last point I want to make is that if you want to support these rivers, like I said, the Dan River Basin Association, the Master Naturalist programs, there's a lot of programs to help you support the rivers, but it starts in your own backyard. It starts with the decisions you make about how you manage your landscape and about what you allow to leave your property. The rainwater falls on your house, goes down your gutters, goes onto the ground, and then can either spread and soak or it could run across your property. Typically in the United States, both cities and towns, individuals, they all want to get the water off their property as fast as possible. And fast-moving water is going to take silt, trash, chemicals, and other things and eventually deposit it into a river. So I guess this is a public service message about taking care of your property first, making sure you have solid erosion management, that you slow and spread water, that you grow as much as possible, because a lot of that water can be turned into vegetables, it can be turned into biomass, it can sequester carbon, but we don't want it to get to the river in a condition that is not as clean as when it fell. And unfortunately, as you can see by the river here, and the brown darkness of the water, a lot of times you can see the bottom of the creek here. We don't want to have this, and we can stop this to a great degree by managing the erosion on our own properties. I hope I've given you some good examples to get started with. Thanks for watching. I'm Justin Hitt with Prosperity Homestead. www.prosperityhomestead.org to ask your questions. I'm always looking forward to hearing from you. And of course, I'm down here at the Smith River, at the South Martinsville River access And there's more about who benefits from this on this little placard here. And I didn't see these little exhibits before, but they got little frog exhibits, the life cycle of a frog. All of these creatures depend on you to do your part to prevent erosion and to ultimately manage properties in a way that increases their values. Thanks for watching. I'm Justin Hitt, www.prosperityhomestead.org.